Battle for Christmas. More like a battle for my sanity. Hey guys, I'm Aden. Welcome back to the archive channel, and today I'll be doing a breakdown for my newest video, Christmas Commercials, or as it's called in this DaVinci Resolve project, the Battle for Christmas, because yes, this was part of a 5-part crossover, and I happen to be part 2. I'm going to be going over everything today, so I'm going to start at the beginning of the timeline all the way over to the end. If you're interested in a particular part, check out the chapters below, as well as the link to the original video down in the description. I'll be honest with you, I don't have all the footage for this one. So the Denver conversation, we're just going to be using the actual video because I don't have the phone call anymore. And same for the J clips. So just letting you know up front about that. Everything else I managed to keep, and I'm recording this video now so I can get it done and then delete all the shit off my hard drive because it's taking up an asinine amount of space. But that's it for the intro. Let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. What a great place to start. So this intro was sort of inspired by the opening to Back to the Future. And if you've watched that movie before, you sort of just see Doc's house, and the news station and the plutonium and Einstein's food and all these little inventions. I wanted to do the same thing here to give you an idea about who the character is and sort of what we're doing in this video. That's a fake alarm sound, by the way. This thing was quiet the entire time. And you know how alarms, after they were done playing, will sometimes play a radio station or something? Well, in this universe, it instead plays the Damn Daniel theme, which I think is funny. Also, if you're curious about these title cards, these are just standard PNGs. But I added the Mr. Alex Tech Magic Animate V3, which is awesome, and then enabled this sort of waviness so they move normally. Anyway, let's continue on. This pan shot took an ungodly amount of time. I know you see all of these cuts here, but that's for VFX. This entire thing from here to here was done in one take. Not the first try, but one take. And what made it way more complicated was a couple of things. One, I'm using a tripod to pan up and down, and you got to do it at a certain speed because if there's any jerky movements, it's going to pick that up on camera and look bad. So I had to be real gentle each and every time I was doing this, and if I fucked up once throughout the entire minute-long take, you got to do it all over again. The other thing that was a massive pain in the ass was I was also doing the focusing. So a great place to see that. See this little horse picture? If we hit play, now it's suddenly in focus. Jeez, how epic is that? Not very epic when you're the one having to tap on the screen to focus on certain points. And this is the only part in the video. It does it multiple times during this shot. And each time you tap on the screen, you're slowing down a little bit and you introduce the possibility for more jerky movement. So that fucked up a lot of my takes as well, unfortunately. But yeah, the one we get here is the one that managed to work out, but it took several hours. Then we got this Ramzan news clip. I'm going to show you briefly what that looked like. So we got the take Ramzan sent me. And then what makes up this newscast is a couple of different things. This here is Whip background, an effect from the Editor Collection by Jake Whip. It's paid, but you get a lot of cool epic shit, including this, where you can literally just make your own background and add film grain, which is awesome. And what I use this for is to kind of recreate the Last Week Tonight John Oliver sort of news set. So how it works is we have Ramzan here, and then with a little bit of keyframes, we move him over while the background comes in. And then to finish it off, I made these little rectangles. You might have seen these in a bunch of other Blue Couch Productions videos. Put some stock footage of the forest for the Chappaqua Equa segment, and I even made one for the Stewie Griffin's dead body one, even though you don't actually see it in the video. This was just something I made for me, I guess. But if you're interested, actually, I can go ahead and post this full thing, as well as all the other deleted scenes in a separate video. But I just won't have time to talk about all of them today. That part was not difficult. The difficult part with this Ramzan shot was this. Yep, it was green screened and it was tracked. So you know what that means. We hopping back in the Fusion page, baby. Oh my gosh, what are all of these nodes? Well, I can explain it. So here's that Ramzan news footage that we saw earlier. All this color corrector is doing is lowering the saturation to make it fit more naturally on a TV screen. I also added a bit of blur. Keep in mind, with the camera this far back, it would look really unnatural if it was super sharp. So a little bit of blur makes it look like you're farther away. And then we have the node that made it possible, and that is planar tracker. So essentially what this is doing is it's taking a look, if we get rid of these real quick, it's taking a look at these crosses and it adds points on them and then tracks the position throughout the entire clip. And then when it's done, you can pin your footage onto the TV, and with the little merge mode of background over foreground, I can hide the footage inside the TV screen, which is pretty cool. So then you might be wondering what these things are. Delta Keyer helps get rid of the green, and what these little nodes here are doing essentially is getting rid of the crosses and then getting rid of some of the green in the scene, I believe. Is this going this one? No. Okay, we had it right before. Lit. This was a pain in the ass to not only figure this out, but set it up correctly. This is sort of the same process I used for the J phone call scenes that we just won't be able to look at. Another bad part about this was I actually had to break it up into 2 separate tracks, because if we look here, you'll notice that there's no crosses here. The crosses only show up until we get further into the clip. So the planar tracker's not going to work. So what do you do in those instances? You do them by hand. So this is me making a polygon mask for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames in here. And then what that allowed me to do was to put the Ramzan footage behind here. So if we watch it from beginning to end, you'll notice kind of here, right? So this is the by hand stuff. And all I'm trying to do is to keep it similar to this main clip. And then the same thing here. This is by hand. Try to match it up to the end, which I think is pretty cool. You may be wondering, who's under those covers, Aden? Nobody. Because I did this shot by myself for several hours. So what this actually is a couple of pillows that I strategically placed to make it look like there was a body underneath there. That became a little difficult, though, because the next shot is me getting out of bed. So Aden, if you filmed this shot here and you're not under those covers, how did you get it to look like you were coming out in the next shot? And that's where creative transitions come into play. So what I did here, if we mute the volume, because this is going to get pretty annoying. We zoom in pretty far, and during this zoom, I have this Gaussian blur effect that is sort of blurring the footage the closer we get in, until we get to right about here, where it's super blurry, super zoomed in. Bam, switched it. So now you're looking at the second shot here, essentially. Then I, using the blur, go from super blurry back to crystal clear, and then zoom out. And that's how we get into the second shot. So yeah, it was all a little bit of trickery. This doesn't quite match, unfortunately. If I was smart, I would have had this bed pile look like this bed pile, but I don't think people really knew, so hey, that was fine. But if we look at it in real time, zoom in and blur, switch the footage over, unblur, unzoom, and then bam, we're going. And that's how we did the transition. Okay, so we have the fucked up footage, mosaic transition, glitch sound effect, and then this shot right here, which I actually have in its own separate timeline because this was shot on a phone? How could you, Aden? I thought you were a real filmmaker. Yes, despite the fact I spent $600 on this Sony mirrorless camera and another $600 for these 3 lenses just to use in recent videos like this, I still needed a phone. Why? Because some shots it's just better for, like this one. right here. So if we turn off all the effects, this is what this shot looked like originally. And it was kind of a mistake on my part because I didn't realize that iPhones naturally shoot in HDR, which is fine if your project and monitor supports HDR, which mine does not. So it looked really blown out. Thankfully, I found a tutorial on YouTube to fix it, and I downloaded this HDR conversion LUT that takes this HDR footage and puts it into SDR, which helps bring the colors back to normal. We still fucked it up later on by adding a lot of these effects to make it look all dingy and shit. This RGB split sort of just messes with the colors to kind of make it look like a monster's walking around. And then this mask rectangle adds this sort of vignette to it, which I think is pretty cool. It also gets a little bit of blur. All right. So these stopwatches, I sort of made the graphic by hand. And then when we go to here, I can kind of show you a little bit of how it was made. We have this Patrick Sterling text preset called Cursor Scramble. And what that's doing is sort of making up a bunch of different keys, and then it ends on whatever you type it out to be and adds these little scan lines, and I just adjusted the color. So these are all the characters that's scrambling, and this is what we end up with. In motion, these are kind of what they look like here. So they sort of pop up, set in place, and then fly back down. Again, we did all the animation in Fusion, if I can open it up. No, that's the text. Quit being cringe. Yeah, a little transform to do the animation. So then I shut the door, and then we have the J phone footage. Again, I don't have this anymore, so what this is just a cut from the actual final finished video, but it was very similar. You had these sort of crosses, same like on the TV footage, but on the phone, and then using the planar tracker, tracked Jay's footage onto it, and then all I had to do was keep the phone steady for about 20 to 30 seconds. So the shot of my hand and the phone gets reused multiple times, even though the footage inside is different. And then we have a delta keyer to get rid of the green and the crosses, and then sort of fix the shot and make it super blurry. Again, tracking is a pain in the ass. I don't recommend people do it all the time, but I wanted my crossover episode to not just have Discord calls, and that would have been the easy solution to do. But for here, I wanted to make it feel like an actual film, you know what I'm saying? I love this shot so very, very much. And then we have this title card that Jay made for all the parts. So if you're curious to how this came together, this was Jay the Zoomster, and I think it looks pretty neat. Ooh, look at that. All right, then we have the first set of commercials, and compared to the live action stuff, the commercials were much easier editing. I didn't have time to add like the borders and the ocean background and everything. So this one was relatively simple, where all I really did was record audio at 2 a.m. over a bunch of different commercials, and whichever ended up being the funniest to me made the cut into the video. And then I had to go around searching for a bunch of different visuals. I kind of wanted to keep this separate from the story stuff, and so I actually made a different timeline for it entirely, just so my workspace would look a little bit cleaner. So if you're curious, these are all the different commercials, and it lasts about 11 minutes long, and the final video is like, what, 27? So the story stuff's a little bit longer. I kind of wanted them to be even, but that didn't work out, unfortunately. Cool thing about these commercials is that I didn't edit all of them. I got COVID on Christmas Eve, right as I was wrapping up production, which meant that I wasn't going to have time to finish editing the last couple of commercials. And so what that meant is I DM'd Jay that day asking if he could help edit them, and he said yes. So if you enjoyed this Jubilee roll commercial with the Friendly's news footage, that was Jay's idea. if you enjoyed the Eminem commercial with the fat guy falling down compilation, that was Jay's idea. And he did one more. Yeah, the Charlie Brown mac and cheese one. That one was fairly simple. All three of those were ones that I just couldn't do. I ran out of time. Yeah, there it is. So Jay came in and actually literally downloaded my Charlie Brown Christmas video just so he could use it as a B-roll in this section, which is so awesome. I gave him no notes, essentially. I gave him the files for the commercial, my audio that I obviously recorded, and just told him to have fun with it. And he finished it that day. Only took him a couple hours and did a great job. I barely made any changes. And in case you're curious, actually, these are all the unused commercials. So, yeah, we have about 18 minutes worth of footage, and these were all the ones that I thought were funny, but that I couldn't get around to editing, and they weren't like super essential to the video. So here's where they sit. Again, if you want to see all the deleted scenes, let me know. I can include these commercials in there. I think that would be pretty cool. And then we use a little glitch effect. This one was just found on YouTube, which is pretty neat. And then I used it to match, because the last time you see me, right, if you recall, is the shot where I shut the door, and then I open the door, and then it cuts, right? But that's on Earth 1. So then all these commercials happen, and we get the little glitch sound effect to let you know that we're switching worlds, and here's the action of me opening the door to go with it. The whole world hopping thing wasn't originally a part of the plan, so this was just me filming in continuity, and then when I realized that the world hopping thing was going to be a deal, that's where all the transitions came from. Alright, then we have Ethan being funny for a lot of different clips. Fairly simple. We actually forgot on the day of filming to get my reaction shots to this opening scene. So this was done after the fact. These were filmed days later. And then this little zoom in bit. The reason this whole gag exists was because we had filmed this shot right here and this shot of laughing. And in my head, it was going to work out to where Ethan says, "It's a Christmas miracle," wink, and then we laugh. The problem is he says that and we immediately start laughing. There's no pause. There's no wink. There's no nudge to the camera, right? So I had to actually create that. And what I chose to do to hang on that moment is to make a shitty star wipe and find a bunch of epic little Christmas gifts that I thought were humorous and snuck in our little gnome guy. So if you've watched the crossover, you'll know that this guy shows up in every single video. Some of them he's a little bit more hidden than others, but that's where I decided to stick him. So there he goes. And then this entire conversation was filmed in 2 different takes. We didn't have 2 cameras, right? So the way this worked was we filmed all of Ethan's stuff first, and I would just sort of improv the dialogue with him. And then I had to remember what dialogue I said in the improv so I could reuse it here. So Ethan's behind the camera in these shots, and I'm behind the camera in here. And the result of the conversation is just editing, man. Timing is the basis of all comedy and the basis of all editing. And you just sort of suit it to taste. It's all instinctual. The longer you do it, the easier it gets to sort of feel out a scene like that. And then the Denver conversation stuff, which, again, don't have Denver's footage anymore. So I can't really break down any of the shots. But similar to the Jay stuff, me and him got on Discord pretty early on, and we improv'd the dialogue. He did 2 takes with me, both of which ironically started him with him doing a song. And then what I would do then was try and remember as much as what I said in the improv and film these way after the fact, like weeks later. The hard part was matching up Denver's footage with mine And so I originally was going to do the lazy route of just like having his voice over the phone. But I'm like, no, I want to see what he's saying. So I made these sort of little split screen animations where you could see both of us. And then if I forgot to improv a line, I could just use my voiceover from the call and then sneak it in there while he is full screen, essentially. And then if I don't like what he's doing on camera, I can cut back to me full screen. And using that was a little bit of trickery to be able to shorten it down and make it feel more natural. And then this shot was equally stressful because this was also a one take. Once he started tearing this can, we couldn't refilm it because then we would have to make this prop over again and we just didn't have time. So this was a one and done thing. I am standing behind the tripod, leaned up, back against my TV, very little room. I'm standing on my tippy toes to get enough height so we can see this all going down. And I'm just trying to keep everything in focus. And Ethan was expecting this to be one tear, but when it wasn't, he had to keep acting shocked throughout it and just fucking nails it. And then what we have here is for each tear, we have two things. We have a vine boom, which is funny, and then a slight zoom in. So here we start at 1 and we go just a natural like 0.3. Then the next one we start at 0.3, we go to 0.6, another vine boom. Then here from 0.6 to 0.90, 0.90 to 120. So just these natural slow zooms until by the end of it we're like super, super close up. And thankfully the focus was on the Sprite can. So even though Ethan had to tear this thing multiple times, in editing I made it look intentional by adding these little vine booms and fake zoom ins to kind of make it seem like it was part of the shot. And then all of this footage was shot by Denver and Jay on the iPhone. But the interesting thing here, I think, is if you listen to it naturally, it's a mess. You got like very loud wind sounds and you can barely hear them. So I essentially recreated the entire soundscape for this section. The only part of the original audio you hear is right here when he says let's go. He says the Spider-Man line here and then the grunts. And that's it. I added in my own wind sound effects. And then when the water's pouring here, I added in my own water sound effects. So this is kind of my first actual sound design job I've done in a video before. And I wouldn't have done it had the audio not been so bad. Like, even with all the EQ and voice isolation and volume adjustment, it still did not sound great. So, yeah, I did my best to sort of recreate what it should have sounded like. And then we got these sort of cinematic black bars, which come from a Mr. Alex Tech preset called Magic Letterbox. He picks up the goblin, and then I added in an electricity sound effect, and then we got two things here. A magic mask, which was used to mask out the background and only focus on Denver. And then using that, I was able to put a proto effect on top of just him specifically and not the background. Believe it or not, and this is funny to me, throughout this entire video, we have all of these commercials, right? And I thought, surely one of them is going to get me a copyright claim, right? I was thinking maybe it's going to be the Campbell's one because it's pretty popular, or the M&M's one, or hell, maybe even Virgin Mobile. Nope. I got no copyright claims on this entire video until I use this. The little Christmas music at the end, this Carol of the Bells, orchestra high quality, got me a claim. Oh well, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't intend for this to be another, like, mostly Aden and his friends fuck around video, because I know that's what the last one was. I had hoped to have one in between that's a bit more normal, but then we got the idea to do another crossover, and well, this is what happened. The next video, I promise you, will be a normal ass gaming or cartoon video, and we'll go from there. But I had a lot of fun working on this. This was my last project of 2023. All the homies seemed to enjoy it, and hopefully this editing breakdown gave you the ideas to go make your own cool shit, which I think is what I'd like to do with this series. It's not just me showing off my own shit. It's to hopefully give you ideas for you guys to take and implement and do shit in your own videos. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.